The Florida Panhandle, the most misunderstood region of the state. Despite being Florida's most beautiful coastline, for some reason or another, this little skinny corner of Florida doesn't seem to grow as fast as other regions. With a fifth of the population density, despite having some of the most beautiful beaches and quiet settings in the entire state of Florida, why doesn't the Florida Panhandle grow like the rest of Florida? And what makes it unique in its own way? That is the topic of today's video. You would naturally think that just for its natural beauty, that the Florida Panhandle would be the fastest growing region in Florida, but it lacks something that the rest of Florida has: large cities. Tampa, Orlando, Miami, there are simply no large cities in the Florida Panhandle. Pensacola comes in at just shy of 500,000 people in the whole region. Leaving the Florida Panhandle to access major infrastructure like an international airport will put you at about 4 hours minimum. And it's that lack of infrastructure, the lack of large cities, that holds this region of Florida back. And sure, along the beaches you have a lot of money, but a lot of that money comes from the deep south. And to be frank, those aren't the type of people that have money that other people who have money want to have a house next door to. Like a recent notorious article about an Alabama warden who used the money that was meant to be to feed the inmates to buy himself a house right here in the Florida Panhandle. So you can kind of understand why people with money simply avoid this, unfortunately, backwards part of Florida. Coming into the Florida Panhandle, you'd notice more rebel flags, more political banners, and less brain cells. And that's coming from South Alabama. We're going to break down the Florida Panhandle into individual cities and regions so we can understand exactly why this part of the state, despite having so much natural beauty, simply doesn't attract many people to move. We'll start off by looking at the area around Destin, known to have some of the most beautiful beaches in the entire state of Florida, and that is by no extent an exaggeration. Destin, Miramar Beach really is literally the most beautiful and pristine water that you're going to find anywhere in the state of Florida. Despite being the most beautiful beaches in Florida, the water temperature here is only acceptable during the spring, the summertime. During other times of the year, the water temperature likely will not be comfortable enough for a swim. During spring break, when it finally warms up, and during the summertime. However, during the wintertime, this region of Florida usually stays pretty empty, which is the complete opposite of South Florida beaches that are packed during the winter months. Pensacola, this being the largest metropolitan area in the entire Florida Panhandle. Once again, you have some of the most beautiful beaches of the state of Florida, from Navarre Beach and its beautiful massive pier all the way to Pensacola Beach. These are absolutely gorgeous natural settings, as well as many important historical landmarks like forts. This region really does have a lot to offer for people who like to explore nature and wildlife. Beautiful white sands and clear water extend as far as the eye can see. And Navarre Beach is considered one of the best fishing destinations in the entire state of Florida. Hotels are relatively affordable, which means that people entering this region of the state can find very affordable accommodations compared to going to Miami Beach, where hotel prices can be as much as 3 times higher during some times of the year. There's also many undeveloped and protected areas, so you have a great contrast between buildings and nature. It's not just a massive built-up coastline. There's a lot of places where you can really enjoy nature in this region of the state. You would think with beaches like this, people would be flocking to move to Pensacola, Florida. But why aren't they? When you look at the analytics for income and crime in Pensacola, a different picture is drawn up. Pensacola has an overdose death rate of 70 per 100,000, that being about 7 times higher than Miami. And despite the region being affordable, the incomes are so bad here that most people simply can't make it. Even with the affordable housing, there simply isn't any opportunities economically. Being the furthest west city in Florida and a decent-sized metropolitan area, Pensacola has become somewhat of a dumping ground for criminals from other states that are adjacent. Alabama and Mississippi are two states that are very harsh on their criminal laws regarding addiction as well as homelessness, which means if you're an addicted person living in Mississippi or Alabama, chances are you're going to scoot on over to Pensacola so you don't end up serving the rest of your life in prison. Alabama will arrest you for being homeless. At some point, you've probably heard some of the notorious and horrendous things that happen in Alabama prisons on the news. So it's no surprise that criminals are going to leave Alabama and head to Pensacola. Panama City Beach and Panama City. We'll start off with Panama City Beach, the home of spring break, one of the most fun cities you can be in the United States during the summertime. This city really is a blast. Spring break has been going on here for decades, and quite possibly the worst place you could be if you are a year-round resident who just needs a decently paying job. Not only does tourism not pay very well, it's clearly seasonal, and being a worker in this part of Florida simply sucks. And while most of us enjoy a fun beach town to vacation in, to live year-round in a fun beach town gets kind of old. The crime, the drunk idiots, the stupidity, and of course the endless violence of people visiting from nearby Alabama and South Georgia means that Panama City Beach ranks as one of the most dangerous cities in the entire state of Florida. Just think that you can actually buy a house here within less than $500,000 and be able to walk to the beach. And even that doesn't encourage people to move here. They know it's a place you go to party and a place you leave. You don't want to end up year-round. And unfortunately, while it is a great, beautiful beach town, it's not a full-time beach town. It's during the spring break when there's things going on. And then you have all the crime waves from Alabama and South Georgia that make this a somewhat unattractive and clearly unsafe location through some parts of the year. Now, there's been some efforts to make it safer, increase police presence, and give spring break a better reputation. But clearly the people that come here are coming from states that have a lot of problems, and they simply don't know how to behave in a civilized society. Panama City Beach has also become somewhat of a cultural center where the music trends, auto customization, and other types of subcultures, you could call them, really go on display here every year. All the things that happen here in Panama City Beach first spread to other parts of the country. It's making its way into video games. It's making its way into movies. Did I forget to mention being hit directly by Category 4 and Category 5 hurricanes back to back, and then not having the ability to recover fast enough because everybody's impoverished? That really seems to be the biggest problem with this region of the state. Then there's the backwoods, the back roads, the dirt roads, going far off the map where there's nothing but dollar stores and drunk rednecks flying rebel flags. And we know that flamingos made their way up there recently for the first time. They'll be heading back to South Florida soon, I hope. Either that or they're going to end up in a flamingo jambalaya. I know how to say this. Jambalaya. Dang it. Flamingo jambalaya. Not sure why that doesn't sound right. Flamingo jambalaya. These hicks are going to eat the flamingos, man. And they'll probably eat you as well. Because a lot of people who've reported moving to the Florida Panhandle, those backwoods areas, have actually reported having to leave right away. Because the locals are simply hostile to outsiders. They're full of Dale Gribble type conspiracy theories. They're just hostile, unfriendly. And these backwoods of North Florida simply are some of the most backwards people you could ever find. There's just too much to deal with. And a lot of people that have moved to this region of Florida have told me that they've actually had to move away. Some of them telling me stories about their children in school being taught things that were clearly inappropriate by the teachers. You can't make this up. This is a real email that I got from a subscriber. But I've had several Asian families tell me that they moved to the Florida Panhandle and they eventually had to move out because simply the teachers were not treating their kids appropriately in school, as well as other types of discrimination that they face in their community. Clearly, the political rhetoric that people believe in this part of Florida is so ridiculous that even people in adjacent states like Alabama think it's too much. On top of that, you have to deal with the local sheriff. Old small town southern rule. The good old boys. Clearly, who the crap wants to deal with that? The affordable housing prices and beautiful natural settings of this part of the state, as far as its remoteness, which I think is great, would in theory make it a great place to live. Unfortunately, the land here is worth nothing, and those who move to this area find out that there's a reason why it's so affordable in this region of the state. The locals are just too dang backwards, they're too stupid, they're too inbred, and their political ideology is so strong. They're constantly talking about politics and putting bumper stickers in their trucks and signs in their front yards. And really, it's just too much for most people to handle. There are many beauties to be discovered deep in the backwoods of Florida. But let me tell you, it may not be worth living there among those backwards inbred hicks. Now, the eastern tip of the Florida Panhandle is kind of inconclusive how far east the Florida Panhandle actually goes. Clearly, it's not the entire coast of Florida, but for the sake of today's video, let's end it around the area of Tallahassee, Florida state capital. Tallahassee has nothing to do with the rest of the Florida Panhandle, in that it's mostly a liberal college town. Seems like the only conservative person left here is Ron DeSantis. Tallahassee is every young college kid's dream town. It's fun, it's full of graffiti, crime, and healthy food options. The musical artist T-Pain originates in Tallahassee, thus the name T-Pain. What can you say other than it's a very hip young city? And just like the rest of the Panhandle, it simply doesn't have any good industries other than slanging. Now, I'll be honest, analytically, Tallahassee and Quincy, surrounding rural areas that all vote Democratic, have a lot of great analytics. They have a very low drug overdose death rate. That's freaking great. It has low crime rates in some categories. It's got some good, it's got some bad. What it doesn't have are good jobs. It's a college town. People move here, then they leave, which means that the real estate market here has absolutely no inherent long-term value, which means it's possibly a horrible place to invest in real estate. After all, it is a college town. I've done some walk-arounds Tallahassee late at night, and I can tell you it really doesn't have a safe vibe. Now, don't get me wrong, it's not Montgomery or Baton Rouge or any of the other cities in the South, but the smell of smoke is always in the air. There's always somebody doing a burnout. There's always somebody blasting music at 2 in the morning. It really has an active crime going on 24 hours type of feel, which I'm definitely not a fan of. And again, it is extraordinarily affordable, but just like the rest of the Panhandle, it's not enough of an incentive to attract people, especially considering that Tallahassee doesn't even have beaches. And while there are people up and about late at night, it simply doesn't have a vibe that would encourage me to want to be out there. If you want to move to the Tallahassee area, there's actually a video on my channel called Moving to Tallahassee, Florida. As you guys know, we've traveled all over the country, been to all types of places. So when we give you our opinion on a particular place, it usually has a lot of reference points, other things to compare it to. I hope you guys have enjoyed our video about the Florida Panhandle and its great attributes, as well as some of the struggles that are holding back this region of the state. And I hope you guys understand and know a little bit more about this region after today's video. It really is the most misunderstood region of the entire state. And let's not forget that the Florida Panhandle is also part of the new tornado alley. There's nothing more terrifying than getting a tornado warning in the middle of the night when it's raining and you can't even see the thing coming at you.